couple we're waiting on. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some of the stuff from our trip that were just some things that were different and highlights for me. Not going to be, I'm going to save it. I'll share maybe like my favorite thing I'll share last after other people have had a chance to go. But we've had a bunch of the people who are on the trip come here. I've got one person who emailed me so that I could share that on their behalf. And we'll kind of pull you guys up here somewhat at random. But I just want to share a few of the kind of highlights of just new things. I've shared before trips to Israel, and so I only picked a few highlights rather than every single spot along the way that we went to. You know, I could have gone through the video that we showed this morning and talked about each and every one of the sites. But if you're from our church and you've been here for a few years, you've probably seen highlights of Israel in the past. Some of the stuff I got to go do was kind of fun because I got to sneak away and kind of do my own thing for a little bit. So while everyone else was checking out the palace at Caesarea, so you have Caesarea Maritime on the sea. Our first stop, I shared a little bit about it this morning, and just the devotional teaching we did there. But as you walk around, you get to go down to the seashore. You get to see where Herod's palace was that went out into the ocean. He basically had a tide pool where the waves would come in and fill this pool, and the hippodrome off to the side. But underneath it, there we go, is actually a prison cell. And this, when you come out of here, they attribute this to Rabbi Akiva. And I've actually read about that in stories in the past about Rabbi Akiva when he was tried there at Caesarea. But there is this prison, and so it makes you wonder, and the video doesn't keep going, but if I had walked all the way out there, when I came out, everyone was up top looking down. And in years past, that wasn't open. So in years past, you would look down in there, and down there is like a prison area. Well, this year I found a set of stairs that led me down there. So while everyone else was up top, we ran down there to take a quick look. Because I'm always keeping my eyes open for new things. And so I'm actually going to share a few things that were new. So even those of you who are on the trip, I actually have a couple of pictures from other years just to show some of the changes. And that's one thing that's kind of fun about going more than once and going again and again is you get to see how things are getting dug up, things are getting changed. But there was a sign, I didn't put the picture up there, but the sign talks about how in the 130s is when Akiva was held there for multiple years and he was sentenced to death. And the question is, though, is that wouldn't that probably also be the same prison where Paul would have been kept? If there's a prison there below the palace, it makes logical sense that they would have used the same prison for multiple people. But of course, to the Jewish people, Rabbi Akiva is a more significant figure, and so that's the one that they're focused on when you read the big sign out there. But likely this could have been, again, I'm just putting it up to see, the area of the prison cell, and you can see they haven't dug forward from there yet, or at least it's all blocked off at this point. So they might continue opening up more sections of this underground portion. But that was new for me, so that was kind of cool and different. I'm going to save my favorite thing for last after everyone else has already shared. But, we go up to the Galilee. That's our normal routine. Maybe next trip I might mix it all up and go a different direction. But normally we start, at Tel Aviv, and we go up to the Galilee, and we see all the sites. We went to Mount Carmel. We went to Megiddo, which was, an ancient stronghold, but it's also where we get the word Armageddon from, is Har Megiddo, Har meaning mountain in Hebrew. And so there's the valley out in front of it where all the armies are going to gather together, Revelation 19. From there, we hit Nazareth. I had a couple videos from the Nazareth village this morning in the highlight video where you get to go and people are dressed up and you get to see a little bit about how life was back then. And one thing I love about the Nazareth village is that they have that first century wine press there. But one highlight is always baptisms. Love doing baptisms there in the Jordan River. We always do it in the northern part of the Jordan River, which is not where Jesus was baptized, but it is where the water is clear and not brown. But this year was a new special treat, fish. So I normally am there in the winter, and I've never once even seen a fish in the water there. But this time around, there was all these fish. And it's not just fun that there's fish. They were biting at your feet the entire time. And so Tony and I are doing these baptisms. We're trying to keep a straight face. I mean, you're baptizing someone, and you're trying to be serious, and there's fish just, and they're just relentless. They would not stop. And for those who were there, I know you guys met Bart. I know Bart was like, oh, I thought you guys were kidding, and old Bart's like, oh, yeah, I thought you guys were just joking. But you get down there and all of a sudden, nip, 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 nip. The fish are just, it doesn't hurt at all, but it is, you just don't expect it. And then just again and again and again and again. So that was an interesting highlight for me this trip. Another highlight for me this trip, Bet Shan. It's the bathhouse. And if you've gone in the past, you've probably seen the bathhouse. But I've been there 6 times and I'd never seen the bathhouse before. It's a very cool Roman bathhouse. And they actually show you how all these posts is where they would actually light a fire. And there's the tub area or water area above that. They light a fire under there to heat the water. And so you have a hot, like a sauna room, and then you have a warm room, and then you have a cold room. But that's why I never get to see the bathhouse, is that every other year we hike up to the top. And that's a picture from the top of the hill looking down into Bet Shan. And I'm always the guy taking the group hiking up there, but we were short on time, so we didn't do a hike this year. And I finally got to see the bathhouse. So that's kind of an ironic thing that I'm like one of the few people who's never seen that before. But that was, I think, 2016 with my wife. And so there's the view from the top. For those who were there, you can see the theater in the background, and I'm standing right in front of where the bathhouse would have been, or where it is. So that was fun for me. I got to see the bathhouse finally. Kind of a highlight for me. The Temple Mount was a fun experience this time. There's a few unique things. One thing that we had to make sure we got a picture of was all of the graduates with their Mexican flag. People don't realize that when you go to Israel, you're meeting all these Jewish Israelis, but then you start talking to someone like, oh, I'm from Miami, or I'm from here, I'm from there. And what you find is Jews who live all over the world, many, when they graduate high school, they want to go back home and serve. And they've maybe never gone, like the guy from Miami I met, he didn't speak Hebrew. He was just learning Hebrew as he joined the IDF. And that was a few years ago talking to that guy, but this was a graduation ceremony that we got to see that was at the Western Wall. And so everyone had their big graduation. And afterwards, there was this one group that was gathering the Mexican flag, and they were taking their photos because they're people from Mexico who born and raised in Mexico, but they went over to serve in the IDF once they were old enough. So kind of a fascinating thing. Other things from the Temple Mount. Clicking. You guys just want to see the flag longer. Maybe you guys can help me get to my next slide. They're looking. Is it thinking up there is why? It's thinking. Well, there we go. We'll see if it comes back. So I shared this photo this morning saying I might speak a bit more. So one of my goals on the Temple Mount this trip was to go and find some of the special places in the ground and in the rocks. And what you see right there is Judah is actually standing on chiseled bedrock. And so it's not part of the stone laying, but that specific part is actually the mountaintop itself. What's fascinating about that is it's really hard to date it, but it's likely, if not Herod, it could even have been originally chiseled down in Solomon's time. And the idea was is they made the temple platform, there were areas where the bedrock stuck out, so they just chiseled the bedrock kind of into a square formation to match up with the rest of what they were building. And I knew there was a few places you could see this. So while everyone else was walking up the steps, Judah and I ran off real quick to get a picture of this area of the bedrock. And let's just go to the next picture and we'll see. Maybe you guys are on slides tonight. Here, these front steps, so you can see on the left, you have a newer pavement stone. The stairs on the right are newer, but that bottom step, those are all Herodian stones. So those are Herod era stones. And this is the kind of stuff that helps you place things on the Temple Mount. I'm not going to go into the long, drawn out, how this implies this, that, and the other, but I had never taken the time to find these. If you go to the next slide, to kind of place this for the people who weren't there, or maybe if you've been there before. This morning I showed a picture of, I think, Judah and I with a selfie with that Dome of the Spirits behind us, where the bedrock is showing. right there, in fact, I think that's Glen, to the right of Glen up top, you can see the top of the Dome of the Spirits there. And so this is the very northwest corner of the Temple Mount. And so at the very northwest corner, there's some stairs going down, and you get to that bottom step. And so those bottom steps in the pictures, those are Herodian stones. And so for me, I'm looking for these little tiny things because I've been there a bunch of times, but this was unique and special for me because, again, finding these unique stones actually do give us hints at where the location of the temple should go and things like that, because these are original stones. These aren't all the new stones. Everything else around there was added in later generations because the temple gets destroyed and they rebuild the platform. Dome of the Rock gets built, they redo this and that. And so finding original Herodian stones up there gives us some guiding points on where things would be located. I'm going to try and quickly exit my program here and see if maybe I can regain control. Sunday night, recap Holy Land. And nope. You can do the next slide. Oh, good. Look at that. All right. So I'm going to still pull it here so I can see what I'm doing. All right. Don't bump that. So this, I wish I didn't have a picture and I didn't take the time to go try and find one. I was trying to get everything else put together, but this was something also unique that I had never taken the time maybe to put two and two together until this trip. But we're currently at the Southern Steps. And so we've done group photos on the Southern Steps. If you came before, if you went to the very top of this photo is the main area of the Southern Steps where we would sit out there. This is the south side of the temple. So the Temple Mount, you walk up the Southern Steps. That was the main way the people came in. There were other entrances used by the priests. There were other entrances used by royalty and people of great significance. But the main people entered from the south. And the south is where you find all the mikvahs, the ritual baths, so people could go and bathe in the mikvah before they go up into the temple. And if you look, the temple only had two sets of doorways, these little two sets of double doorways, and they actually kind of went through a tunnel that would actually pop you up through the ground on the Temple Mount. All that to say, you can't see it in this photo, but to the right of the picture, that part of the wall is a filled-in section. That is where those doors were. And why that's significant, I told people, is because there's the nice stones, those are modern. Then there's the real rough stones. Those rough stones are first century. That's original stone from Jesus' time period. And because it's placed right in front of the doorway, I told people this is probably the only place in Israel that I can say without a shadow of a doubt in my heart, Jesus walked on these stones. Most of the stones are gone that he walked on. They're buried underground. But here at the temple, you figure if he went there every year of his life, multiple times a year for the different feasts, and there's only those two sets of doors. So unless he was a real creature of habit and really liked the left doors and never wanted to use the doors on the right, that he would have walked through these doors numerous times throughout his life, and he would have walked on those very stones. So again, people might not realize until they go, it actually is hard to find places where Jesus walked, in this very spot. You can go to the seaside and know he was there. You can go to a building and know he was in the building. But to go and say, well, I can guarantee these very stones Jesus walked on, that's something I think pretty cool and special. Just for those of you here tonight who have been before or were just there with me, I wanted to show a short clip of the Temple Mount from 2016 to give you guys a comparison of, if you can listen in the background. So what was going on there? So we were there, and it's pretty empty this trip. This place, this time it was filled with Muslims praying, and they brought up some of these young Jewish men because the Temple Institute is still preparing for a new temple. And part of that preparation, in fact, I just read an article about the red heifer recently where they've been doing practice ceremonies for the red heifer. Like they're not doing anything for real, but they're talking about how we're doing a practice ritual so that when the day comes to do the real thing, we've already done it before and had some practice. Well, they will take these young men who are training to be priests in the future, in a future Jewish temple on the Temple Mount. That's the plan. And they'll take them up there and walk them around and do that kind of stuff. Well, we happen to be there on a day where these Jewish boys are brought up there, which doesn't make the Muslims up there very happy. And so if you could hear it in the video, they're all chanting Allahu Akbar in the background. And it was very intense. That was our first trip there, my first trip there. And I'm sitting there and there's all this chanting on all sides, Allahu Akbar. And you're just kind of watching it all unfold. And it was quite intense and quite interesting. This is the Pool of Siloam. So if you've been there before, you can see how much has been dug out. And if you haven't been there before, I'm going to show you one other picture. But this was a highlight for me just because this was 2018. And so a few of you were there with me in 2018, but that's just an example. It used to be a few steps and then, a wall and some dirt. That's what it looked like just a few years ago. They just began digging on our 2023 trip. And then Judah and I went in 24 and made a lot of that progress. But again, just kind of showing, this is the stuff where if you go a few years later, and it's amazing to see how much they've dug in, how much they've changed. You see these steps. This morning, again, I mentioned the Pool of Bethesda. And it's the same concept where whether the pool was high or low, the steps just kept going down into the pool. That way, no matter what level the pool was at, people could go down on the steps to get to the water. And so that's the Pool of Siloam there at the end of Hezekiah's tunnel on the southern side of the city. One last thing from Israel I'll toss out. This is the first time I took a group to the Abraham experience. And I know you guys all really enjoyed that. And that's something, ironically, I'm not a gimmicky kind of guy. I want archaeology and I want, and so it's like, we're going to dress up and we're going to go out. I was like, I've been a little reluctant in the past, but I've always heard great reviews. And so when they said, do you want to do it this year? I said, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. And it was a great time. You get to ride the camels down, but you actually get to have what's a Bedouin experience. And that's, I think, the cool part is that you get to lay down on the floor. Well, some of us laid on the floor. Others had chairs. But, and you get to eat at the table. And even the people who went, those little things at the time, you might not think about how they were continually refilling the food. And that's part of the Bedouin hospitality. If your plate is empty, it means you want more. And so they will just, as soon as they see anything empty on the table, they were real fast to come out there and fill it up again. It's the best service you'll ever get at an eating out situation is you have a Bedouin experience. So that was fun. Got to ride some camels. Few things from Jordan. So first one was our experience at the border. Yeah, the people who were there, remember. And you guys weren't there for all of it because I was inside for all of it. The Jordan border was really rough. And I'll tell you what, those of you who went to Saudi, wasn't that bad coming from Saudi Arabia into Jordan. But if you're coming from Israel into Jordan, it was not a fun experience. And actually, what's ironic, the Jordanian economy is 17% based on tourism, which I think is their second highest. I think exporting minerals is number one, Dead Sea and whatnot. But they don't make people want to go tour in Jordan very much. They were going through everyone's bags, pulling out every little thing, and they took a bunch of people's stuff, saying, well, that's an artifact. You can't take that through here. And people had their receipts. One family from the church in Spokane, they had bought a Roman denarius. They paid like $600 for it. And they had all their paperwork, and the Jordanians took it. I think, as last I heard, they're still trying to get it back because they took it and they filed paperwork for it. But the few of the people, they pulled them into a room by themselves, wouldn't let them talk to anyone. One lady, she had a $10 menorah. And for whatever reason, they were making a big deal over this menorah, because that one, I think they know it's not an artifact. But she had it, packed in her stuff, put away. And so she just said, just take it. So she walks out to the bus. As soon as she's out of the room, they begin snapping it into pieces. And Pastor Tony almost flips his lid. He was losing it because it was frustrating. And these guys were, So that was an experience. And it's worth saying, though, now, it's one of those things. If you go, just know sometimes this place and that place, this is part of international travel. This is part of, feuds between religions and between countries and whatnot. But that was quite an experience. We were there for like 4 hours just in that one spot with the Jordanian side. But it was worth going to Jordan. One highlight was the Madaba map. This is something I'd seen in videos. Judah and I got to go see this. It became kind of a running gag where for a while there, they told us, well, we could save an hour if we just went to go see the replica. And then people like, no, we're going to go see the real thing. And then everyone was happy, went to see the real thing. And I kept complaining that I've never gotten to see the replica before. And so it's like, next time I'll get to see the replica. But it's the most ancient map of the ancient world of this type. And so it takes up, it was originally about like, was it 20 by 48 feet or something like that, the original floor mosaic. And some has been destroyed through earthquakes. And this is only a small snippet of it, but that's Jerusalem. Capitolina is what the Romans renamed it. Once they paved, they plowed Jerusalem flat in 135. They renamed it Capitolina, the capital city. Obviously, you've got Petra. There's the monastery, which I would tell anyone, if you go to Petra and you can, get up to the monastery. When you first come into Petra, it's the treasury. Indiana Jones, that's the treasury, and that's a beautiful thing to see. The monastery is a good amount bigger than the treasury. It's a good amount larger. It's pretty impressive. I always tell people, if you're not going to be able to make the walk, pay for the donkey ride. Because it is. I think it's great to go up there and see that. But one thing I was telling people about long before we got to Petra is actually this. At the temple there, they have this big temple, which I found very impressive, and it doesn't get the screen time that the chiseled into the mountain things get. But this is the plaster, and you can see drawn on the plaster is this colored design. Here was another piece where you can see the coloring and the artwork. This gives you a glimpse, because when you go to the Middle East, you see all these things, you've seen pictures, you see all these stone buildings and all these big, stones. And what you miss is that in ancient times, it wasn't just stone. There were plaster, just like we plaster our walls, right? Old lath and plaster, or you got like drywall and plaster. They plastered everything, and then they put artwork on the plaster. And so I can only imagine, when these things were actually being used, right? When in the times when they were built, and you walk inside, beautiful smooth walls with decorative artwork all along the sides. And so it kind of gave a good a glimpse of maybe what it would have been like back in its prime. All right, I've only got a few more, and I'm going to start calling people up here. In Saudi, there were camels. Lots and lots of camels. It's funny because when you're in Israel and Jordan, everyone's like, a camel, a camel, a camel. And I'm like, just wait, because once you get to Saudi, you're going to get camels all day long, and you'll get your fill of the camels. Do not worry. But that was obviously, it's fun. Everyone likes to see camels, and they're funny creatures. And then you got to eat camel, and they really enjoyed that. They got to have an authentic Saudi meal. As always, the split rock. Those who saw it, it's bigger than in the pictures, huh? I think is when you actually go see it in real life, it's huge. Just the portion of, not even it's on a hilltop, right? So you got to climb up a hill just to get to it. But just those two rocks, they're tall as a church. They're taller than the church. They're big rocks. It's a big rock. And one teaching point I made while we were up there is the concept that if you read in Exodus where God commands him, he says, go to the rock that is at Horeb, and then you're going to strike the rock, and then it's going to split. But God was telling Moses long before it was ever split, go to the rock at Horeb. Well, when you see it, you'll realize there's really no other rock like it nearby. There's lots of big rocks all over the Saudi desert. Wadi Rum to the north, the Hizma Desert all around. But this rock is, again, big as the church building, up high. It stands out. So even before it was split open for the water to come out, it very likely was a landmark that people would recognize. It's on a main route that trade routes and caravans would go. And so, yeah, when you get to the big rock, hang a left kind of a thing. And so, unique rock, the cave of Elijah. So this is where I was told it's not a hike, it's a climb, right? That's what everyone reminded me, they call it a climb. But just for the people who are just there too, you guys have to imagine now too that this morning we looked at Mount Carmel again. Remember, Carmel was in the north of Israel. So Elijah runs from Mount Carmel in the north of Israel all the way down to the Saudi Arabia Peninsula and up to this cave. And it's a beautiful view from the cave. The view out from the cave is quite majestic, and it is an achievement to be able to climb up there. And one last photo for me, and then I'll start calling on you guys. Clicking again. Next. Thinking for you and me, huh? I think it's because we have so many big, it's because we have so many high quality photos. It's a lot of computer memory. But my last photo, whenever it does come up, is just from the summit. Oh, there it is. And yeah, so this is at the summit. That's Gabriel, grandson of Pastor Tony. And here we are looking down. Elijah's cave, if you just look straight above the boys, you see the peak of some rocks. So it's down to the right of those. That's the hill that Elijah's cave is on, and you got to hike quite a ways down to that. And it's actually even funnier is, if I have to get up and point, I don't know, you probably can't even see it. Even the people who are there probably can't even see it. But right down there, you see where there's some dark spot that swings like this. And just above that, if you see tiny specks, that's our cars. You zoom in, and you can just barely see the cars. They look like specks once you're up on top of that mountain. And so it's definitely a mountain, and anyone who climbed to the cave or tried climbing that, they have a newfound respect for Moses when it says, and then he went up the mountain, then he came down the mountain and talked to the people. And then he went up the mountain and talked to the Lord. Then he came down the mountain. It's like he spent a lot of time climbing back and forth. So I've got one more thing I'm going to share in a bit, but I'm going to have Glenn come up. And then I got your video here. You want me to start it? No. Here. I'll give you this and I'll get out of your way.
And the bright lights.
Yes. They can all see your pretty face. That's the...
So no one has asked us to share a trip before. So what makes this trip so special? Have you thought about that when you've gone on vacation or anywhere? Has anybody ever asked you to share a trip in front of the church? No, have they? So what makes this trip special? What do you think? It's the Holy Land. And it's very unique in that sense there. And it was interesting because why would you go there? Why do you go on vacation? Or type of thing. And why would you go to Israel, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia? And it's really interesting. It's a different perspective of how people have looked at me totally different when they realize, oh, you went to Israel? What? Especially this day and age, especially with what's happened in the last few years. But just a few things is, it's kind of interesting. About the only thing they have in common with us is everybody has a cell phone. It's amazing. The donkeys riding up to the Temple Mount, up to the Treasury and up through everywhere there. Everybody has a cell phone. Everything else, it's a lot like a third world country in a lot of ways, in a lot of the areas we visited there. Who remembers watching black and white TV? Okay, until you go there, and this is what one of the guides had said, is it's black and white, and then you're going to see color when you actually go there. And that's what it felt like, going from black and white to color TV. So it's an interesting deal. Another thing one of the tour guides had said is, how many of you used your imagination this morning when Joe was talking up front there and stuff like that, or how you're imagining stuff in the Bible? The tour guide goes, you don't need to use your imagination anymore when you're there. And that is true on a lot of stories there that going through, and you're seeing stuff there. And the other thing is, Israel's only twice the size of Yakima County. So it's not a very big place. Or as one other person put it, it's from the Oregon border to the Canadian border. It's very small. This morning, a pastor in our church asked, we're doing a 30 days of reading the Bible. He's through the Bible, in the Bible for 30 days. And he asked some of the people, what is the biggest question you have? And it was really interesting. What he came up, what the response was, it was, why is there the Old Testament? Because everybody likes the New Testament. It's a lot more, there's not so much punishment or issues in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament. And I was thinking about that. And especially in Saudi Arabia, when we went to Saudi Arabia, and it was all the Old Testament in the Saudi Arabia when we were there. But I got a question for you, and same for me, it goes for me, is how many miracles do you need to believe in Jesus or God? You look at the Israelites. I cannot believe how many miracles. We saw the Red Sea, and it's 3 times the width of the Columbia River, and it got parted. Would you believe Jesus after that or God after that? But it was just a few days later, they didn't believe him. You know, where's the water? Where's the food? What are you going to do? They wanted to go back to slavery because at least they had 3 square meals. And it's really interesting when it comes alive and you actually see that there. One of the things that was interesting is walking around Jerusalem and other areas, steps were uneven. And I thought, well, why are they uneven? It's crowd control to slow people down so people can escape or in that way to keep them where they needed to be, I thought. The video is, if it's up there, yeah. It's in Nazareth, and it's a tomb. Is there sound? These spots are called a niche, much like what we call in America niches. You have your niche in life. Well, this is your niche in death. So that's a burial plot where where you'd be buried. You'd basically, if I remember correctly, they'd put you in the tomb there for a year, and then after a year, they'd come and get the bones and put them in each of those areas right there. And they were called a niche. And, you know, working in business and in construction, they go, what's your niche? And it's kind of an interesting thing of how many words, there are so many other words that have come from there, the medical field and industry there, so many other things have come from the Middle East, and that we learned today on that. Summary, I think, was asked or mentioned, what does this mean? Or what does this trip mean to you? And I guess it's a way marker, much like marriage. You know, there's before marriage and then after marriage, maybe after kids and before kids kind of thing. This is kind of something similar as big as that, and at least for my life, is before and after, how you measure what's going to happen down the road. Or it's not like a vacation to Hawaii. I've been to Hawaii, Australia, Europe, a lot of different spots. This is nothing like that.
Thank you, sir. All right, before I forget, Char, he's in Spokane, so it's a lot harder for Char to make it up here, but he wanted to just write, he wrote for me just to share some of his experience. And he said, there wasn't a single part of the trip that he did not enjoy. He loved every moment of it. He says the experience was amazing and spiritually enriching, and it was awesome to have the experience and knowledge of the pastors and the guides. He said that the travel, accommodations, food, everything were excellent. He just thought it was great all around. From the beginning of our trip, the first night at Netanya, it eased us into basically stepping back 2,000 years in time. Upon leaving Netanya and making our way up to the north, despite the modern world happening around us in more urban areas, at the same time, it was like a time warp. And my favorite places were many, but they were mostly the sites that helped me relate more to Jesus' life and ministry, such as Nazareth and the whole Galilee, Tiberias area, Capernaum, going to the Jordan River and the areas, getting ready for us heading to Jerusalem. So then once at Jerusalem, he says, all these favorite sites, the Mount of Olives, the Palm Sunday Road, the Garden of Gethsemane, the Temple Mount, Caiaphas' house, the Garden Tomb. And he said probably the Garden Tomb was a highlight, for the entire trip for him and where we took communion. This experience is one that I felt a deep spiritual presence and connection with while we were there, and it was moving, emotional, and amazing. And from there, it seemed we went further back at a time, of course, to the more Old Testament sites, and those were awesome too. He said Jordan's Petra was amazing, and Saudi Arabia was an incredible part of the whole trip. The stuff learning about the NEOM project, which that's an interesting thing going on there right now, is the Saudi government essentially sold off the whole northwest corner of the country to this building project where they're putting in state-of-the-art a ski resort up on Jebel Alaz, just one hilltop over from Mount Sinai. And so it's fascinating what's going on there, but also kind of interesting to see what they're doing. And they just said, my experience of the Holy Land was outstanding for every moment of the last 2 weeks. I loved the physical activity, the truckloads of historical, archaeological, and biblical information that were overflowing, personally and spiritually enriching to the max. I can't wait to go back for more. And so that was Char. Next, just because I think I have their pictures lined up, I'll have the Wallers come up here to share.
Oh, that's not good. Yeah, so this was a fun trip for us. We celebrated our 30th anniversary this summer, and part of it was we're like, okay, we got to do something fun. Where are you going to go? And then it was kind of an epiphany at our church. We were advertising the trip, and the slide comes on, and we'd seen it for several weeks. I was like, oh. We've always wanted to go to Israel, and we wanted to do something special for our 30th. That makes sense, so we did, and it was a good time. We had a great time for that. A lot of people asked us, so what is your favorite part of the trip? What was the thing that really stood out? And that is, oh, there was so much. Yeah, a lot of people asked to put her on the spot, but there is so much. It's like it was a great experience, but it's hard to put it in just one. I really enjoyed the Sea of Galilee area, seeing that. I love Capernaum, Caesarea was cool. It was neat to see the Romans and how they had they had a certain pattern that they would follow. So like when archaeology they discover a place, they can say, oh wait, this is Roman because they have the theater here and it's a Roman style and all that. But they were really. The Romans were really intelligent, really brilliant on how they laid stuff out, also where they put cities and stuff like that, strategic places, road places, or road crossings. Some of the other things that, it was neat to see the Sea of Galilee. In fact, okay, that's on the Sea of Galilee. That was fun. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
That was our boat ride. Well, okay, sorry, this is, we woke up that first morning on the Sea of Galilee and saw the sunrise, so that was really, really cool.
We woke up at like 3:30 or first day,
Right.
A little bit of jet lag.
Yeah, and then we took a boat ride on the Sea of Galilee, and it was pretty calm, and they put up our flag, and they sang the national anthem, and then they started playing worship music, and then we have a video. I don't know if there's the video of it. No, okay. And that was it was just a really calm. It wasn't stormy. Everybody says, was it stormy? No.
Yeah.
It was calm.
We did do the Peter test, see how many people could walk on water. Everybody failed, so I was kidding. We didn't do that. Took a little bath. So the next slide, so this is looking from the Temple Mount towards the Golden Gate, up towards the kind of the Mount of Olives kind of thing. And then the next picture. So this is a history. So I grew up with this painting on the wall, living room wall, and I remember Dad saying, "Oh, that's in Jerusalem," and he tried to explain where it was at. But that the picture before and this picture are this almost the same spot. Yep, just that I wasn't quite at the exact same spot. Of course, the previous picture, the painting, that was done in '66 or '67, and the story behind that was. My mom and dad, when they were down in Selma, Alabama, there was a pastor down there that went to the Holy Lands. He came back and had a picture of this. And my dad thought it was really neat because it was looking from the temple toward the Mount of Olives where Jesus was going to return. And then also the Golden Gate, how it kind of lined up there. And so to my dad, that meant a lot as far as just kind of the remembering that Jesus is going to come back and touch down there. And so when we were there, we sent that picture, but I was off a little bit, but it was like, oh, that's the spot, that's the columns and all that. And so that was pretty cool to see that in real life because I had grown up and it just didn't click. But that was cool to see. Yeah, until then. But one of the things that you talked about earlier as far as, we both have kind of mentioned, is like, for us, it was really cool. It didn't necessarily, grow our faith or make our faith stronger because we already believed, and seeing these things was really cool. And Kristen would often say that.
Oh yeah, it's like as you read your Bible now, it's definitely like you're reading in 3D because it's all the places and the smells and the peripheral vision of it all, and so it's really cool to see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that kind of stuck out to me, my first impression was when we went down there is like, I'm shocked that, this is the picture. This has nothing to do with this, but I was kind of shocked. It's like, this is the Holy Lands. I wasn't real impressed as far as the scenery. There's nothing like if you were to go like over Snoqualmie Pass, it's a pretty sight. Or if you go over Chinook Pass, you see Mount Rainier right there. It's like, that is awesome. That would be God. If I were God, that's what I would pick. So you go over there. It's like, it's just like kind of like the Yakima Valley. Got the rolling hills, the kind of the sagebrush. They didn't have sagebrush, but something similar to that. And it's nothing really profound. But for some reason, that God chose that part. He said, "Okay, Abraham, I'm going to bless you with this." Promised land here for you and your descendants. You will inherit this for forever, and this is for you. And for not sure what the mind of God. Who can understand the mind of God? But it's interesting that God would choose that area and say that is my chosen spot for the my people Israel. And I was talking to Kristen earlier about this. I don't know world history super good, but I don't know of any other landmass that has been more fought over, argued over, there's more strife in that area than Israel. And it's just, like Glenn was saying, it's not very big at all. Top to bottom is like going the state of Washington from Oregon up to Canada, and it's just a pretty thin strip. But for some reason, God says, hey, that is my promised land. In fact, he says that I'm gonna do a new Jerusalem. It's gonna come down into that same spot. So it's like, I'm not sure exactly why, but it was really cool to see something that was dear to God's heart. So, and then that picture
Yeah. So we went when we were
on Joe's little excursion.
Yeah, Joe's little excursion. We
He was
all
kind of funny. Hey, let's do this. Like, okay.
and so we wandered into an area where we didn't know if we were quite supposed to be there. So we went into this one place, and this was, obviously there's archaeological stuff going on in here. I think the next picture is what we saw when we first walked in, and the flash made it bright because it was pretty dark in there, so that's cool. But they're obviously doing some work down there, but we don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So
Felt like we were being sneaky.
yeah, it felt naughty. So yeah.
Yep. All right.
And that's supposed to be part of Herod's palace, Tower of David. And for what it's worth, that's supposed to be, like, I had like directions on how to go there, but we got there and it was like there was no one there and the door was open. So we looked inside and it's like, well, there's no one here. Yeah, it was like, maybe it's supposed to be closed, but it was open, but it's on the list of places you can visit in the tour. So we were trying to find that spot and we got there, but then it was kind of weird. Yeah, we got there and like, it doesn't seem like it's open. But I think the big takeaway from the Wallers is that it's the Palm Springs of the Middle East. That's what I got from you guys. All right. Hey, Judah, I know you're sleepy. Come on up here. He's like, I'm so tired. So you should have taken a nap today. So it is, for those who went, now the Wallers did not join us on the extension, so they've had a week to catch up on sleep. But the rest of us, it's about 5 in the morning right now or around that time. So I told you 3 things you want us to. Go for it.
In Israel, I liked the Hezekiah's tunnel going through the waters of Jesus' time. That was my favorite. And then Jordan, it was Petra riding on the horse and just having fun going up, climbing, and enjoying that. And then in Saudi Arabia, I would say the Mediterranean Sea, just swimming around, collecting like seashells like this, and enjoying it, and snorkeling and seeing lots of cool fish.
Yeah. I know this is one of the shells he brought back. Glenn disappears, and Glenn comes back with an armful. Look at all what I found. He just shows up with all these shells, and so, of course, we're going to go shell hunting, too. And people asked, like, are you allowed to take the shells? They're like, well, the boarder took them out and looked at them. They didn't say anything about them, so we're assuming it was fine. But yeah, so we took one, and then we gave away all the other shells to other people on the trip so they could take one back. But that was your highlight. But thank you. You can go. I told him, there you go. All right. Do I do all your family together, or do I do you guys first? I know. Okay, well, Maria, why don't you come up, and then I'll get these guys up here too. Come on, Ramirez family and more. After you? No, go on.
Buenas tardes. Será un poquito difícil para mí explicarlo. Fue mi segunda experiencia yendo a Israel.
So it's going to be a little difficult to explain it because this is our second time going to Israel.
Pero la verdad es un lugar mágico que impacta mi vida, mi corazón, mi espíritu. No hay palabras que yo pueda escribir. Veo las fotos y digo, es mucho más allá de lo que puede ver un video o una foto. Es mucho más que eso.
I'll try my best. It's a magical, for her it's like a magical, indescribable, awesome place that it just always, like, I don't know, it just always just doesn't really affect her faith, but like, just like boosts her faith, strengthens.
Aunque ya algunos lugares fueron repetidos, pero para mí era como si la primera vez que los hubiera visto.
Some of the places she went to her first time, but it's still like if she went the first time.
Quisiera vivirlos cada momento. Fueron muchos lugares más que vimos, pero todo fue muy intenso. Algunos lugares que vi era como si fuera la primera vez que los había visto, pero vimos muchos lugares más que para mí todo fue muy intenso porque fue mucho.
A lot of the spots was like she said, it's like if she was going for the first time, and it's just there were a lot of intense moments just because it's like, oh, it's capturing to her again.
Lugares favoritos. Primero, muchísimas gracias a Dios porque me permitió ir y agradecerle al pastor Joe por la invitación. De verdad que es un privilegio que me permitan ir a este viaje.
Well, she's just thanking the Lord for the opportunity that the Lord has given her to be able to go on this trip, not once but twice, and she's thanking Pastor Joe for bringing her along.
Cuando Anthony me dijo que iban a hacer otra vez el viaje, dije, yo quiero ir. O sea, cada vez que me dicen un viaje, ni sé cómo le voy a hacer, ni cómo lo voy a pagar, pero yo quiero ir.
When there's an Israel trip, now it's like she doesn't know how, but she's going to find the way to pay for it because she just loves being over there. She's told me before that if she could, she would move over there.
Anto me dice, ¿estás segura? Yo no voy a ir. Tú no sabes, pues por el inglés es mi idioma, pero cuando uno conoce de la palabra, la verdad es que es algo espiritual que de verdad tienes que vivirlo.
When the first time and this time too, I asked her, "You sure you want to go again?" It's like it's not in Spanish; it's in English. Last time we had trouble translating a bunch of it because I was learning a bunch of it too. But she's like, "No, I'm gonna go again because this time it might be easier for me." And it was a lot easier for her to understand because she recognized a lot of the spots.
No puedo decir que hay algo que de veras, nada más esto, es que cada lugar es un lugar que lo puedes vivir de una manera que Dios te muestra que Él es real, que todos los que te pueden poner en duda tu fe, la palabra de Dios, no hay nada que revoque la realidad de lo que es estar en ese lugar. Sorry, Anthony.
You guys just got to learn Spanish, and then I don't have to translate. No, she's just saying, it's reassuring. It's for her, just reassuring that our God is an awesome God, and just seeing all the spots that she saw, just like there's no denying there's a God. And every piece of the Bible that we saw throughout the tour, it just reassures her that, you know, God did what he did 2,000 years ago.
Pero algo que mi corazón sí latía muy fuerte era cuando Pastor Joe nos llevó a la entrada de donde Jesús caminó. Él enseñó una parte, pero hay unos miradores y luego tú puedes mirar cómo se miraba en el tiempo en el tiempo que estaba Jesús.
So one of her favorite spots was the Southern Steps. On the Southern Steps, it has like this little telescope where you look through it, and it shows kind of like a diagram of how it used to look as you would walk up. And so that was one of her highlights.
Estar parada en ese lugar, mi corazón por dentro latía, decía, Señor, por aquí pasaste, de verdad es un privilegio, cuánto quisiera que cada uno de tus hijos que te conoce viviera este momento.
And she just prayed to the Lord, you know, Lord, I would hope that one day anyone that wants to come, that believes in you, could come and just experience what she experienced there.
Petra fue un reto para mi vida. Tengo 55 años, sé que fueron personas más adultas, pero las alturas sí me afectan bastante.
She enjoyed Petra. She's saying she's 55 and that she's not complaining because there was people older than her, but she's just saying that it was a challenge for her to climb Petra.
Desde Jordania fue bonito, pero sí nunca me había sentido ilegal, ni aquí en Estados Unidos como me sentí en Jordania.
She also agrees with Joe on that crossing into Jordan just was a whole big situation, just going through the customs and everything, that she just felt more, because she's not an illegal, she's a U.S. citizen here, but she felt like an illegal going into a different country.
Era un lugar muy estricto, pero entiendo las razones de seguridad.
She understands the necessity of all the security going to one country into another country.
En Arabia Saudita de verdad fue muy bonito ver muchas cosas nuevas, pero mirar el mar Rojo por donde pasaron el pueblo de Dios, ir a donde los amalitas tuvieron la guerra con el pueblo de Israel, donde Moisés pudo estar con sus manos levantadas, apoyadas por los demás para ganar la guerra.
Going into Saudi Arabia now, she just loved every part of it. One of the highlights was going into kind of the battlefield where the Israelites faced the Amalekites, and Joe shared where he thinks Moses was raising his arms and they had to hold his arms up. So that was one of her highlights.
Pero hasta el día de hoy todavía cierro mis ojos y todavía duermo y todavía sueño, es en el monte Sinaí.
So to this day, it hasn't been that long, but she falls asleep and she dreams only Mount Sinai. That's all she can think about.
Es algo, cuando yo no lo subí todo, hubo una parte al principio del monte que me empecé a marear y sentí que por seguridad no debería subirlo.
So she didn't climb all the way up to the peak, but she climbed part of it. She got to the cave, but before she got to the cave, she kind of got stuck in a spot because she started getting sick, and so that's where I didn't see her anymore. I thought she went back down, but she'll continue her story.
Pero le dije a los demás que siguieran, que yo ya no iba a subir y me dijeron que me sentara en una roca y en la sombra para esperar al grupo.
So while she was feeling dizzy and whatever, people kept passing by her, and they told her, you know what, just rest, go in the shade, and just take a little break, and then you keep climbing. And so that's what she did.
La verdad me puse a llorar. Me puse a llorar y hablar con Dios.
She started crying and she started praying to the Lord because there was really no way down. Once she started climbing, it was a climb, it's not a hike. Once she started climbing, there was no way you could come down that same way.
Una de las muchachas muy jóvenes se detuvo, se regresó y empezó a orar por mí.
Pastor Tony's his daughter came back and started praying with my mom because my mom was kind of freaking out. She was crying, and so she started praying with my mom.
Se fueron, pasaron como más de media hora después de que se fueron.
It was about half an hour where she just stayed there.
Y yo le pedí al Señor, Padre, permíteme llegar un poquito más cerca y vivir la experiencia.
So she prayed to God, God, please let me go a little farther. That way I could experience this because she really wanted to experience the climb.
Sé que fue parte de Dios. Me levanté, tomé fuerzas y llegué mucho más de lo que yo pensaba.
And so, yeah, it was all God because she's climbed up and she got up to Cave of Elijah, and that's where she stopped. But it was an experience for her.
Llegué a la cueva,
She got to the cave.
pero ya no sabía ni cómo regresar.
And so part of the miscommunication when we got there is that when we got to the cave, we thought, all right, we could just come straight down from the cave. But Joe was like, nope, you got to go all the way around to the Elders Plateau, go through the creek, and come back down. They didn't know that.
Bajamos por donde no deberíamos bajar, Dios nos guardó, pero la experiencia es única.
So her and a couple of the other ladies that were there with her, they came down back through where they came from up, which was a struggle for them because there was no one there guiding them. And so it took them about 3.5 hours to come back down. By the time we got around, they only beat us by half an hour. So it took them a while to get back down, but they got down, and so she's thankful that God took care of them on their way back down because they were in a pickle.
No les voy a decir qué pasó con mi cuerpo, pero al día siguiente no me podía levantar.
She's sore because she fell. She fell on her face, coming down. She doesn't want to say it, but I'll say it. But the Lord took care of her. She's really sore. Still hurting from falling.
Pero si el pastor Joe me dijera ahorita, vamos al Sinaí, estoy lista para ir.
She says that if Joe says, you ready to go back to Mount Sinai? In a heartbeat, she would.
Gracias a Dios por esta bonita experiencia y ojalá que Dios me permitiera volver a ir.
And she's just thankful that the Lord gave her the experience, and she'll hopefully go back one day.
I don't have anything to say. I was just going to agree with you. I don't know exactly what I would say. I guess like my favorite part of the trip probably was the extension, just because it was really amazing to see Israel and to see all of the things that we got to, just traveling around and seeing all the ruins. It was amazing, and being able to picture like just how small Israel is. And, we could drive across it really fast, actually. And that was really cool. But once we got into Saudi Arabia, it was just amazing because it's like the same as, it's not developed. It is being developed now, but it is like the same as when the Israelites were wandering through the desert. And that was really, really cool just because, you didn't have to imagine anything. It's like, this is the desert that they were wandering in. That's it. Like, it's just, I could picture Exodus as they're walking through everywhere. And Anthony kept saying, like, multiple times, he'd be like, I get why they would complain. I get it. I see it. But it is kind of just amazing. It's like, it was mentioned already, but it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter how many miracles you see. You either believe in God and you're following him, or you don't. Because the Israelites saw all kinds of miracles, and they still turned. And it wasn't because, their circumstances were so much worse than anybody else's, and it's just because they didn't believe in God. And so it's like, yeah, you just decide, and it doesn't matter, like the miracles, if God does miracles in your life or not, like they're amazing, but it's not what saves you. It's not what makes you follow God or not, because you'll just turn away then if that's all you're waiting for is the next miracle. So that was my favorite part.
For me, this was my second trip, and so for me, the Israel part was cool just because I wasn't just bombarded with so much information. I was actually trying to piece now more of the things that, okay, this actually makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense. So that part of Israel was fun. Jordan was cool. Petra was awesome. It was a fun hike to go up to the monastery. Enjoying time with my wife. This whole trip was fun because I've never had a trip just with my wife, and it was fun. It's kind of like our honeymoon. And so even though 6 years late, but hey, honeymoon's a honeymoon. And so that was fun. But for me, the best part for me was Saudi Arabia, because I remember in 2015 when Joe shared that that video with us, that movie for our Bible study that we had at his house. It was just like, boom, it just blew my mind. I was like, I want to go there one day. But at that time, it was like super illegal. Like the footage that they had was like all hidden and whatever. And so when this trip came up, I really just wanted to go to Saudi. Like if you could take the Israel part, that's fine, out, and just take me to Saudi, I'd go just to Saudi. Just because it was cool to see what's still there. It's like it's untouched, hasn't been messed with, and it's everything that was in that movie, it was there. And seeing the split rock and just how big it was, that was pretty awesome. The altar, the calf altar, seeing that, just seeing all the petroglyphs, it's just like so cool because it's like, how can you deny what happened here? And you can tell they know that Saudi Arabia knows what they have there, but they don't want issues with Egypt, so they kind of just keep it on the down low. And so seeing that and then seeing Mount Sinai, it was a climb. It's not a hike. I already knew that. I know Joe. So when Joe says something, I take it with a grain of salt, and because I know how his intensity of he makes things easy, look easy when they're really not. So I didn't say anything. So I already knew it was going to be hard, but this was like another level hard. Like you're climbing. Like and I don't like heights when like I'm going to slip or something. And so there were some spots where I slipped, and I was ready to like throw a rock at Joe, like, dude, this. But once you get up there and stuff, and you get back down, you're like, it was worth it. It's cool. And so that was fun. But for me, just seeing all this, like Savannah said, when you go through there, when we cross the Jordan, going all the way up through all Jordan and into Saudi, you just see it's like, okay, God punished them for 40 years here, and there's a lot of desert here. It's not just like one little spot. It's like there's a lot for them to wander. And just coming from the Red Sea into Saudis, you could see why they did complain. Like I told someone, I was like, it makes sense why they complained. They just came from a place that had abundance of food, even though they were slaves, but they had their meals. Like Glenn said, they had their meals. They were secure. But now you brought them out. Now they're in this big desert, no food, no water, right? And so, but it also makes you wonder, it's like, doesn't matter how many miracles, doesn't matter how much God can put in front of you, like boom, 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 and just like show you this, show you that you're part of the Red Sea, the plagues, bringing manna down and all that. It's like, he could do all that, but doesn't mean anything with your faith. It's all based on a relationship of faith that you have with God. It's not about miracles, it's not about how much is done for you. It's just, you just believe because you trust God. And so that was cool for me. Would I go back? I don't know, maybe. My wife doesn't want me to right now because we're broke. But yeah, if I could, I'd go back. It was a fun trip. So if you guys get a chance sometime in the future, if you've never gone, I'd save up and I'd go.
Sure, but sing loud. Okay. I said I was going to save one last thing for the end. Let's see if me clicking works. Oh, it did work. Here, short video. Sunrise on the Galilee. So this is a spot that only Judah and I got to go to. And it was one of my highlights of the trip. And in just a second here, you'll get to kind of come out of this little cave. And you'll see where I'm at. Yeah. Here we go.
Church of the Beatitudes is just over the hill.
Capernaum, just over that rise. And down there, my taxi. That's the Church of the Multiplicity. And that was the beach. Okay, that's my face. That's the beach of Peter's Primacy, where he's supposed to be restored. Oh yeah, and this is just above, just a little bit of ways from where I was just taking that video shot. Kind of a old rocks. I still haven't read up on what all is going on up in this area. I think, oh, it's the back of this rock, and there's one more cool one. Let's see here, that guy. Oh, starting over. There we go. So we weren't able to go there as a whole group because we were doing Petra, doing the Jordan portion of the trip. We had one less day in the Galilee than previous trips and one less day in Jerusalem. So we tried to like cram everything into one day, which was impossible to go to all the sites we would go to in 2 full days of touring, but we probably got a day and a half's worth into one day. But this place is called the Eremos Grotto. Mark chapter 1, it says in verse 35, "Now in the morning, having risen a long while before daylight, Jesus went out and departed to a solitary place, and there he prayed." The word solitary in Greek is eremos. The Eremos Grotto is a traditional site. Even in the early 4th century, there's a pilgrim's journal of them visiting this site. And so it's one of the places where they have the Mount of Beatitudes, so the hillside where he would have given the Sermon on the Mount, which is just to the west of Capernaum. And then you have, again, the beach in front there where traditionally, I don't know how, again, like this is, how do you know exactly, but where Peter was restored, right? He's on the shore cooking breakfast, and he calls them in from the boat at the end of the Gospel of John. So that's there on the beach in front. Well, this is a little grotto, which is just the word for cave. Just a little cave on the hillside. And, you know, you see behind Judah and I there, you got the bench, and that's been added obviously more recently. But the tradition is this was one of the places that Jesus would escape to go and pray. And it's a place that I've wanted to go visit for a long time, and I've just never had the chance to stop by there. And of the messages I was giving, I had one prepared to share at the cave, but we just didn't get a chance to go. And, you know, Mark, again, I just read that a long while before daylight, he departed to a solitary place, and there he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him. And when they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is looking for you." But he said to them, "Let us go into the next towns, that I may preach there also, because for this purpose I have come forth." And it just was a good reminder that previous to this in Mark chapter 1, you know, he heals Peter's mother-in-law there at Capernaum, and we got to go to Peter's house there at Capernaum. And it talks about him casting out demons and doing all this work. And Jesus was a busy, busy man. He had a lot on his plate, and he was exhausted, I'm sure, from all that he was doing. But it never stopped him from getting up before the sun and going and finding a place to get alone and spend time in prayer. And as Peter comes, you know, everyone's looking for you. And it just reminds me how, you know, the world may seem like it's passing by, but Jesus knew where his priority was, to be alone and having that sanctified, special time to spend with his Father. And what does Jesus do? Let's go. It's time to preach. This is the purpose I've come. And I think there's something about that where he exits the prayer closet with full confidence of knowing his purpose and his mission, because he spent that time with his Father, you know, and spent that time in prayer. And so again, even at the beginning of that video, I had it on my mind, well, maybe this was the Lord giving me a special gift, because if we went with a tour, we'd go during the day and we'd have to go, you know, while everyone was there. But if I get to go by myself, I can catch a cab a long while before the sunrise, and I can get there before the sun and just spend my time doing my morning devotions there on the Galilee, watching the sunrise. And so it was a special time for me. So that was one of my highlights too. I got to see a handful of new things this trip, and I always do. And I think, like everyone else said, it is amazing. It's a great experience. I think Anthony, he mentioned, I always encourage people. I mean, it's a hardship financially to go once. Going twice is even more so. But everyone who's ever gone twice with me has always said, I learned more the second time, because the first time is so overwhelming. It is. It's just like, whoa, And the second time, well, I've seen this before. So I don't need to sit there and just be taking all these photos or this, or I can just listen to the guide, and I already know most of it. So now you're picking up all the little filler stuff, and it makes a big difference. And so I always encourage people, try and find a way. And there are ways, you can try and find ways to save up to go. You can get your own airfare, and you'll save a little bit of money if you do it that way. But it's worth going. I don't know when, and people already asked me about the next trip. I'm like, I just want to go to bed. I'm not interested in going to Israel today, but ask me in a little while and I'll probably be interested again. But it'll be a little while before our next trip. We always take a few years in between trips for people. But yeah, definitely highlights for everyone. And so overall, it was a great trip. Lots of stuff going on, lots of excitement. Now, in honor of those who are still feeling like it's the middle of the night or the early morning or whatever time it's supposed to be, my body doesn't agree with whatever time it's supposed to be. I'm only going to do one closing song tonight. We actually did that before the trip too, because there was a lot of people were tired after the retreat. I'm not making a habit of it, but I know those who went on the trip when we're here tonight, they're probably just as tired as I am. So take a moment and pray, sing a song, seek the Lord's face, and let's go home to our loved